The Shadow of Death is a 19th century painting by the artist William Holman Hunt, and it depicts Jesus in the carpenter shop in Nazareth. He has been working hard, he's been sawing, and the saw has been put down on the bench, and he stands up and stretches as if he's been working hard and is tired. And the evening sun coming through the door of the carpenter shop casts a shadow on the back wall. The tool rack is full of hammers and nails and acts as the kind of place where Jesus' hands are now fixed in the shadow. On the floor there is a scarf shaped in a circle, a bit like a crown, and beside him on the floor Mary is looking inside the chest where there is gold and frankincense and myrrh, and she looks up in surprise to see the shadow of Jesus on the wall in the shape of the cross. Of course, this is a work of Hunt's imagination, but it does carry with it a message that the Bible shows us too, that the cross was something which was hanging over Jesus' life from the very beginning. The Creed tells us that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, and it takes us there very quickly. There's no mention in the Creed of the powerful things that Jesus did, of his miracles, healing people who were sick and that kind of thing. There's no mention of his wise teaching, the parables and pictures that he leaves us with and that are so memorable to us. There's no mention of his friends and disciples. And indeed, Pilate, other than Mary, Pilate is the only person mentioned in the Creed. And we kind of wonder why. There's a point in the Bible story where it says that Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem, set his face to go there, because that was the place where he knew he had to be. He went there knowing what was going to happen to him when he got there. But that was his determination, that he had to be in Jerusalem, because that was the place where his ministry would reach its climax. And the gospel writers, in telling the story of Jesus, spend much more time on the last week in his life than proportionally any other part of his ministry. Pilate was a rotten character. There's evidence to suggest that he, as a governor, he did many despicable things. And certainly in the story of Jesus' suffering, he takes this innocent man and hands him over to the crowd baying for his blood, and symbolically washes his hands of the whole thing and leaves Jesus to suffer and die, knowing that he was innocent. But Pilate ties Jesus to a real time in history. We know of Pilate from other places, and there are people around today who would tell you that this whole Christian story is a fairy tale that has been made up by weak people to act as a crutch to help them through life. But Pilate takes us away from that Christian fairyland into the real world of power and politics and their use and abuse. Jesus suffered all through his life. Perhaps he was alone and knew what it was like to be lonely. He suffered the hatred of his enemies, many of whom plotted against him and wanted to kill him. Even his friends denied knowing him and left him and even betrayed him. He was arrested, he was beaten, he was tortured. He was an innocent man condemned to a criminal's death, to a long, slow, agonizing death on the cross, crucifixion, the punishment for criminals. Jesus suffered. And so when we find it hard to go through life and when things are hard for us, we come to God knowing that he understands how we feel, because Jesus suffered, and he identifies with us in our suffering. Jesus suffered for us. He shares in our suffering. He shares in the tough things of life that we face. And that's not something we should take lightly or take for granted. But it allows us to find grace from God. And he suffered for us to take away our sin. He died that we might be forgiven. And so, humbly and with grateful hearts, we say that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate.